You know, life is full of individuals who drain the energy out of a room the moment they step into it. You've met them. They manipulate, they criticize, they weave webs of deceit, and worst of all, they make you doubt yourself. These people, these toxic individuals, are not just inconveniences, they are obstacles to your potential. Barriers between you and the person you could become. Toxic people come in many forms: manipulators, narcissists, chronic complainers, and emotional vampires. They can exist in your workplace, within your family, or even in your circle of friends. The biggest mistake people make is assuming they can handle these individuals without first recognizing the signs of toxicity. That assumption is dangerous. Toxicity isn't always loud and obvious. Sometimes it's subtle, creeping into your life under the guise of friendship, concern, or mentorship. And by the time you realize what's happening, the damage is already done. That's why recognizing toxicity early is one of the most crucial skills a person can develop. It's not paranoia, it's awareness. Smart people understand that patterns of behavior reveal everything. They don't judge a person by isolated incidents or occasional bad days. They look at consistency. Does this person repeatedly make you feel small, inadequate, or guilty for things that aren't your fault? Do they seem to thrive on drama, pitting people against each other while maintaining the appearance of innocence? Do they drain your energy, leaving you mentally exhausted after every interaction? These are not coincidences. They are indicators of a deeper problem. The first red flag is manipulation. Toxic people often disguise control as care. They make you feel indebted to them, subtly implying that you owe them something: your time, your loyalty, even your emotions. They twist your words, making you question your own judgment. They use guilt as a weapon, ensuring that you feel responsible for their problems while they take none of the responsibility themselves. Smart minds catch this early. They recognize when someone is trying to dictate their emotions and refuse to be controlled. Emotional inconsistency is another red flag. Toxic individuals can be charming and charismatic one moment, then cold and distant the next. They keep people on edge, never knowing where they stand. This unpredictability is intentional. It creates a psychological dependency, making others work harder for their approval. Smart individuals don't play this game. They recognize erratic emotional behavior for what it is: a form of control. A key strategy in recognizing toxicity is trusting your gut. Many people ignore their instincts because they don't want to seem rude, judgmental, or overly sensitive. But intuition is often more reliable than logic when it comes to social dynamics. If someone makes you feel uneasy, there's usually a reason. Smart individuals pay attention to that feeling. They don't dismiss discomfort as paranoia. They investigate it. They observe behavior, test patterns, and make deliberate decisions based on what they see rather than what they hope. Recognizing toxicity early isn't about labeling people as bad or irredeemable. It's about protecting your mental space before damage is done. The earlier you detect the signs, the easier it is to distance yourself. The longer you ignore them, the harder it becomes to escape unscathed. Smart minds don't wait for undeniable proof of toxicity. They act at the first signs, trusting their judgment and setting boundaries before they get entangled in someone else's chaos. Emotional detachment is one of the most powerful skills a person can develop when dealing with toxic individuals. The mistake most people make is believing they have to engage, defend themselves, or somehow prove a point. They allow toxic people to provoke them, to dictate their emotions, and to control their mental state. This is exactly what toxic individuals want. They thrive on reactions. They feed on drama. The moment you allow them to influence your emotions, you've given them control. Smart minds refuse to let that happen. They understand that emotional detachment is not indifference, it's strategy. The first step in mastering emotional detachment is understanding the game being played. Toxic people are not looking for resolution. They are not interested in mutual understanding or compromise. Their goal is dominance. They use emotional triggers to manipulate others into reacting impulsively. They will insult, guilt trip, play the victim, or twist the narrative to make you feel responsible for their problems. The moment you react emotionally, they win. They now have evidence that they can control your state of mind. Smart individuals recognize this early. They do not respond with anger, frustration, or sadness. Instead, they remain composed, calculating their responses with precision. A crucial part of emotional detachment is controlling your internal dialogue. Many people internalize the negativity thrown at them. They take insults personally. They replay conversations in their heads, trying to make sense of the irrationality. This only deepens the emotional grip of the toxic person. Smart individuals do not allow toxic words to define their reality. They understand that the opinions of manipulative people hold no real weight. They consciously separate their self-worth from the judgments of those who seek to tear them down. Another effective strategy is maintaining a neutral tone and body language. Toxic individuals thrive on emotional escalation. If they see you flustered, irritated, or defensive, they will push harder. They will press the right buttons to get the exact reaction they want. Smart minds neutralize this by remaining completely unshaken. Their tone stays even, their expressions unreadable. This frustrates toxic individuals because they are deprived of the emotional response they are seeking. They realize they have no power over someone who refuses to engage in their chaos. Boundaries play a key role in emotional detachment. Without firm boundaries, toxic individuals will continuously invade your mental space. They will overstep, violate your time, and demand energy that they do not deserve. Smart people do not allow this. They decide exactly how much access a toxic person is allowed to have. If that means limiting conversations, keeping interactions short, or avoiding unnecessary engagement, they do it without hesitation. They understand that protecting their mental state is not selfish, it is essential. One of the most difficult challenges in mastering emotional detachment is dealing with personal attacks. Toxic people often target insecurities. They will bring up past mistakes, criticize your choices, or undermine your confidence. They will do anything to provoke an emotional reaction. Smart individuals anticipate this. They prepare themselves mentally, knowing that these attacks are not reflections of reality, but mere tactics of manipulation. They do not take the bait. They do not defend themselves against baseless accusations. They simply refuse to be affected. Silence is a powerful tool. Most people feel the need to explain themselves, to argue, to fight back when confronted by toxicity. This is a trap. The more you engage, the more power you give away. Smart minds use silence strategically. They know that sometimes the most effective response is no response at all. They let the toxic person exhaust themselves, realizing that without fuel, the fire eventually dies out. Another key element of emotional detachment is understanding that you do not need validation from toxic individuals. Many people fall into the trap of seeking approval from those who will never give it. They try to prove themselves, to change someone's mind, to gain respect from those who are incapable of giving it. Smart individuals do not waste time on this. They understand that not every battle is worth fighting, and not every person's opinion matters. They focus on their own self-respect, refusing to be emotionally dependent on those who do not deserve a place in their lives. Emotional detachment is not about becoming cold or uncaring. It is about protecting your inner world from unnecessary chaos. Toxic people only have power over those who give them permission to influence their emotions. Smart minds take away that power. They remain unshaken, unmoved, and in complete control of themselves, no matter what tactics are used against them. Setting clear boundaries is one of the most essential strategies for dealing with toxic people. The mistake many individuals make is assuming that boundaries are merely suggestions or polite requests. In reality, boundaries are firm lines that define how others are allowed to treat you. Without them, toxic individuals will invade your space, manipulate your emotions, and drain your energy. Smart minds understand that boundaries are not optional. They are necessary for self-respect, mental well-being, and maintaining control over one's own life. The first step in setting clear boundaries is recognizing what is unacceptable. Many people tolerate toxic behavior because they have never consciously defined their limits. They endure manipulation, constant criticism, or emotional exploitation simply because they do not know where to draw the line. Smart individuals do not allow this. They take the time to identify exactly what behaviors they will and will not tolerate. whether it is passive aggressiveness, guilt tripping, or emotional blackmail. They establish a clear mental list of unacceptable actions. This clarity ensures that when toxic behavior arises, they recognize it immediately and act accordingly. The way boundaries are communicated is just as important as having them. Many people struggle with setting boundaries because they fear conflict. They worry about how the toxic person will react, whether they will become angry, play the victim, or retaliate in some way. Smart minds do not allow fear to dictate their actions. They communicate boundaries in a firm, direct manner. They do not over-explain, apologize, or justify their stance. A simple, confident statement is enough. I won't tolerate being spoken to that way. I am not responsible for your emotions. If you continue this behavior, I will remove myself from this situation. There is no room for negotiation or debate. The message is clear, and the expectation is set. Enforcing boundaries is where most people fail. It is one thing to declare boundaries. It is another to uphold them when they are tested. Toxic people will always test boundaries. They will push, manipulate, guilt trip, or ignore them altogether to see if they can still maintain control. Smart individuals expect this and do not back down. They understand that a boundary without enforcement is meaningless. If someone repeatedly violates a boundary, they take action immediately. This could mean reducing contact, walking away from a conversation, or even cutting ties altogether. The key is consistency. If boundaries are only enforced sometimes, toxic individuals will learn that they can still get away with their behavior under the right conditions. Smart minds never allow this inconsistency. One of the biggest challenges in setting boundaries is dealing with the backlash. Toxic individuals do not like boundaries because they thrive on control. When they realize they can no longer manipulate someone, they may react with anger, guilt tripping, or even playing the victim. They may accuse the person of being selfish, uncaring, or overly sensitive. Smart individuals anticipate this reaction and do not take it personally. They recognize these responses as desperate attempts to regain control and refuse to engage in the emotional traps being set for them. They stand firm in their decision, knowing that those who respect them will ultimately respect their boundaries as well. Another important aspect of boundary setting is knowing when to walk away. Some people will never respect boundaries, no matter how clearly they are communicated or how consistently they are enforced. They will continue to push, manipulate, and disregard the limits that have been set. Smart individuals do not waste time trying to fix or change these people. They understand that not everyone deserves access to their life. If someone repeatedly disrespects their boundaries, they remove that person from their inner circle without guilt. They prioritize their own well-being over maintaining toxic relationships. Boundaries are also about time and energy. Toxic individuals often demand excessive attention, constantly unloading their problems, stirring up drama, or expecting others to fix their issues. Smart minds do not allow themselves to be used as emotional dumping grounds. They set limits on how much time and energy they are willing to give. This might mean limiting conversations, refusing to engage in pointless arguments, or prioritizing their own needs over the demands of toxic individuals. They do not feel obligated to always be available or to sacrifice their own peace for the sake of others. Many people feel guilty when setting boundaries, especially if the toxic individual is a close friend, family member, or longtime colleague. They worry about hurting feelings or being seen as unkind. Smart individuals understand that setting boundaries is not about being harsh. It is about self-respect. They know that protecting their mental and emotional health is not selfish. It is necessary. They refuse to let guilt be a tool of manipulation, and they do not allow anyone to make them feel bad for choosing self-preservation over toxicity. Setting boundaries is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing process. Toxic individuals will constantly look for ways to bypass limits, test reactions, and see how much they can get away with. Smart minds remain vigilant. They reinforce their boundaries every time they are challenged, refusing to compromise their standards for anyone. They understand that the moment they allow a toxic person to cross a line without consequence, they are giving them permission to do it again. For this reason, they stay firm, stay consistent, and never allow anyone to dictate how they should be treated. Strategic avoidance is one of the most effective ways to handle toxic individuals without unnecessary confrontation. Many people believe that dealing with toxicity means directly engaging, arguing, or trying to change the other person. This is a mistake. Toxic individuals thrive on conflict and drama. They manipulate, provoke, and create chaos to keep others emotionally invested in their games. Smart minds understand that the best way to win against toxicity is not to play the game at all. Instead of wasting time and energy on people who refuse to change, they practice strategic avoidance. The first step in strategic avoidance is understanding that not every battle is worth fighting. Toxic individuals will do everything they can to pull others into unnecessary conflicts. They will bait people with passive-aggressive comments, spread rumors, create drama, or exaggerate their own problems to gain sympathy. The instinct for many is to respond, to defend themselves, or to prove the toxic person wrong. This is exactly what toxic individuals want. Smart minds do not take the bait. They recognize when an interaction is designed to manipulate them and choose not to engage. One of the most effective ways to practice strategic avoidance is to limit interactions. Toxic people often rely on frequent contact to maintain their influence. They invade personal space, demand attention, and ensure they are always present in some way. Smart individuals control their exposure to toxic influences. If the toxic person is a coworker, they minimize unnecessary conversations and keep interactions strictly professional. If it is a family member, they create distance by limiting visits, phone calls, or messages. If it is a friend, they gradually reduce the time spent together. They do not announce their decision or explain themselves because doing so invites further manipulation. They simply create space and stick to it. Another key aspect of strategic avoidance is controlling communication. Toxic individuals often dominate conversations, steering them toward negativity, complaints, or personal attacks. They bring up old conflicts, play the victim, or shift blame to make others feel responsible for their problems. Smart individuals do not engage in these discussions. They keep their responses brief, neutral, and disengaged. They avoid giving personal opinions or emotional reactions that the toxic person can exploit. If necessary, they redirect conversations toward neutral topics or excuse themselves entirely. Nonverbal cues also play a major role in strategic avoidance. Toxic people look for signs of emotional engagement, frustration, anger, or defensiveness. These reactions signal that their tactics are working. Smart minds maintain a calm, unreadable demeanor. Their tone remains neutral, their body language composed. They do not show irritation or react to provocations. This approach frustrates toxic individuals because it denies them the emotional reaction they seek. Over time, they begin to realize that their attempts to provoke are ineffective. In some cases, avoidance requires physically removing oneself from a situation. Toxic individuals will often escalate their behavior when they sense they are losing control. They may raise their voice, exaggerate their emotions, or make dramatic statements to force engagement. Smart individuals recognize these tactics and refuse to participate. If a conversation becomes toxic, they walk away without explanation. If a situation turns hostile, they remove themselves from the environment. They do not stay to argue, justify themselves, or try to reason with someone who is acting irrationally. They value their peace over unnecessary confrontation. Social settings can be particularly challenging when avoiding toxic people, especially if they are part of the same friend group, family circle, or workplace. Smart individuals navigate these situations carefully. They strategically position themselves in ways that minimize interaction, choosing seats further away, engaging with other people, or staying occupied with different activities. They do not make a show of avoiding the toxic person, as doing so could invite drama. Instead, they subtly control their environment to ensure they are not trapped in unwanted conversations or interactions. Technology also plays a role in strategic avoidance. Toxic individuals often use digital communication to maintain influence, sending constant messages, making unnecessary calls, or using social media to create drama. Smart individuals set boundaries in their digital space. They mute notifications, limit social media interactions, or block contacts when necessary. They do not engage in online arguments, nor do they allow toxic people to pull them into digital confrontations. They recognize that online drama is just as draining as in-person conflict and refuse to participate. An essential mindset in strategic avoidance is refusing to feel guilty for protecting one's own peace. Many people struggle with avoidance because they feel an obligation to be polite, accommodating, or available. Toxic individuals exploit this, using guilt to keep others engaged. Smart individuals do not fall for this manipulation. They understand that they are not responsible for managing someone else's emotions or making them feel validated. They recognize that avoiding toxicity is not an act of cruelty, but an act of self-respect. Strategic avoidance is not about running away from problems. It is about choosing where to invest time and energy. Toxic individuals drain both, leaving others exhausted and emotionally depleted. Smart minds refuse to allow this. They decide which interactions are worth their effort and which ones are best left alone. They understand that sometimes the best response is no response at all. They remain in control of their own space, their own energy, and their own peace of mind. Toxic individuals thrive on emotional manipulation, and one of their primary tactics is guilt tripping. They weaponize guilt to control others, to make them feel responsible for their problems, and to keep them engaged in unhealthy dynamics. Smart minds recognize guilt tripping for what it is, a tool of manipulation designed to strip people of their confidence and autonomy. They do not allow themselves to be controlled by false guilt, nor do they accept responsibility for emotions that are not theirs to carry. Instead, they develop an immunity to guilt tripping by understanding its mechanics and refusing to engage with it. The first step in breaking free from guilt tripping is recognizing when it is happening. Toxic individuals use guilt in subtle and overt ways. They might play the victim, making others feel bad for things that are not their fault. They might bring up past favors, implying that someone owes them. They may exaggerate their suffering, claiming that no one understands or cares about them. They may say things like, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me?" Or, "If you really cared, you would do this for me." These statements are designed to provoke guilt and pressure the other person into compliance. Smart individuals recognize these tactics immediately and refuse to internalize them. A crucial element of resisting guilt tripping is separating facts from emotions. Toxic people rely on emotional reactions to cloud logic. They want others to feel bad first, so they do not stop to analyze whether the guilt is even justified. Smart minds pause before reacting. They ask themselves, did I actually do something wrong? Or is this person trying to manipulate me? They assess the situation objectively, refusing to be blinded by emotion. If they realize they have not done anything wrong, they do not allow the guilt to take hold. Another key strategy is refusing to explain or justify oneself unnecessarily. Many people instinctively try to defend themselves when faced with guilt tripping. They provide reasons, over-explain their choices, or try to make the toxic person understand their perspective. This is a trap. Toxic individuals are not looking for genuine explanations. They are looking for ways to twist words and further manipulate the situation. Smart individuals keep their responses brief and firm. If they say no, they do not follow it with a long explanation. They do not allow the toxic person to drag them into a debate. Emotional detachment is a powerful tool against guilt tripping. Toxic individuals prey on those who are overly empathetic, those who struggle with saying no, and those who feel responsible for other people's emotions. Smart minds understand that they cannot control how others feel, nor is it their duty to do so. They do not take responsibility for someone else's unhappiness, nor do they allow guilt to dictate their decisions. If a toxic person reacts negatively to a boundary, a decision, or a refusal, that is their problem to deal with, not the other person's burden to carry. Setting clear and unapologetic boundaries is essential. Many toxic individuals use guilt tripping to violate boundaries and push past limits. Smart individuals recognize this and reinforce their boundaries without guilt. If they say no to a request, they do not let the toxic person wear them down with emotional appeals. If they decide to distance themselves, they do not let guilt pull them back into an unhealthy relationship. They stand firm, knowing that maintaining boundaries is an act of self-respect, not cruelty. Ignoring guilt tripping is often the best response. Toxic people use guilt as a hook, hoping to reel the other person into an emotional reaction. Smart individuals do not give them the reaction they are looking for. They remain calm, neutral, and unshaken. They do not argue, defend, or try to make the toxic person see reason. They simply refuse to engage. Over time, this makes guilt tripping ineffective because the toxic individual realizes they no longer have control over the person's emotions. In some cases, direct confrontation is necessary. If a toxic individual repeatedly uses guilt tripping as a manipulation tactic, smart minds call it out directly. They say things like, "I see what you're doing, and I'm not going to feel guilty for making my own choices." Or, "You are trying to make me feel bad, so I will do what you want." That's not going to work. This removes the power from the manipulation and puts the toxic person on notice that their tactics are transparent and ineffective. Self-confidence is a natural defense against guilt tripping. People who doubt themselves are more likely to fall for manipulation because they second-guess their own decisions. Smart individuals trust their own judgment. They do not seek approval from toxic people, nor do they allow guilt to dictate their choices. They know that they have the right to say no, to set boundaries, and to put themselves first when necessary. Breaking free from guilt tripping requires a mindset shift. Many people are conditioned to believe that saying no makes them selfish, or that they must always accommodate others. Smart individuals unlearn this false belief. They understand that guilt is often used as a weapon, and that true kindness does not mean allowing oneself to be manipulated. They refuse to carry guilt that does not belong to them, and they recognize that their own mental and emotional well-being is just as important as anyone else's. They move through life with the confidence that they do not owe toxic people an explanation, nor do they have to justify their decisions to those who only seek to control them. Toxic individuals thrive on emotional reactions. They manipulate, provoke, and create drama to gain control over others. Their greatest power comes from the ability to trigger strong emotional responses, whether it be anger, frustration, guilt, or self-doubt. Smart minds understand that the most effective way to disarm toxicity is through emotional detachment. They refuse to give toxic individuals the reaction they are looking for. Instead of becoming entangled in emotional traps, they remain calm, composed, and in control of their own mental state. Emotional detachment does not mean apathy or indifference. It is not about suppressing emotions or ignoring real issues. Instead, it is about choosing where to invest emotional energy and refusing to let toxic people dictate one's feelings. Many people fall into the trap of reacting impulsively to toxicity. They argue, defend themselves, or attempt to reason with someone who has no intention of being reasonable. Smart individuals do not waste their breath. They recognize that engaging with toxicity on an emotional level only fuels the behavior, giving the toxic person exactly what they want. One of the key aspects of emotional detachment is mastering the art of remaining neutral. Toxic individuals rely on the ability to get under someone's skin. They use passive-aggressive remarks, criticism, or outright hostility to provoke a response. When someone reacts emotionally, it signals that they are affected, which encourages the toxic person to continue their behavior. Smart minds counter this by maintaining an unreadable, non-reactive demeanor. They do not flinch at insults, nor do they engage in defensive arguments. Their calm, controlled presence disarms toxicity because it removes the power of manipulation. Detachment also involves recognizing that not every situation requires a response. Many people feel an instinctive need to correct false accusations, explain their position, or fight back when attacked. This is exactly what toxic individuals count on. They want a reaction, they want an argument, they want to keep the other person emotionally invested in the conflict. Smart individuals recognize that silence is often more powerful than words. When a toxic person makes an unreasonable demand or a manipulative comment, they do not take the bait. They choose not to engage, refusing to provide the emotional energy that fuels the toxicity. Setting an emotional boundary is just as important as setting a physical one. Toxic people often try to invade mental space, forcing their negativity onto others. They unload their problems, complain endlessly, and stir up drama to pull others into their emotional chaos. Smart minds recognize when someone is attempting to drag them into an emotional storm, and they refuse to be pulled in. They listen without absorbing, observe without engaging, and maintain a firm mental barrier that keeps negativity from affecting their inner peace. Detachment does not mean ignoring everything. It means being selective about where to direct attention. Toxic individuals seek to control others by controlling their focus. They demand constant attention, creating crises or playing the victim to keep people engaged. Smart individuals take back control by choosing what and who deserves their focus. They do not allow toxic people to dominate their mental landscape. Instead of obsessing over what a toxic person said or did, they shift their attention to things that actually matter. Personal growth, meaningful relationships, and productive endeavors. A critical component of emotional detachment is refusing to seek validation from toxic people. Many individuals make the mistake of wanting approval from someone who will never give it. They waste time trying to prove their worth, hoping that if they say the right thing or act the right way, the toxic person will finally acknowledge their value. Smart minds understand that toxic individuals withhold validation deliberately, using it as a tool for control. They do not waste energy trying to win over someone who thrives on making others feel inadequate. They recognize their own worth without needing external confirmation. Self-awareness is crucial when practicing emotional detachment. Many people unknowingly allow toxic individuals to manipulate them because they do not fully understand their own triggers. Smart individuals take the time to examine their emotional patterns. They ask themselves, what kind of comments make me feel defensive? Why do I react emotionally in certain situations? What fears or insecurities is this toxic person trying to exploit? By identifying their own triggers, they become less vulnerable to manipulation. When a toxic person attempts to push those emotional buttons, they remain unaffected because they have already prepared themselves mentally. Developing emotional detachment also requires a strong sense of self-retrope. It is easy to get caught up in the heat of the moment, especially when dealing with someone who is deliberately trying to provoke a reaction. Smart minds practice mindfulness, pausing before responding to any form of toxicity. They take a deep breath, assess the situation rationally, and choose their response carefully. If engagement is necessary, they keep their words measured and their emotions in check. If it is not necessary, they walk away without hesitation. Another essential aspect of detachment is understanding that people's toxic behavior is not a reflection of one's own worth. Many individuals take toxicity personally, believing that if someone treats them badly, it must mean something about them. Smart minds do not fall into this trap. They understand that toxic behavior comes from the toxic person, not from them. They do not internalize the negativity, nor do they allow someone else's dysfunction to define their self-perception. Detachment is not a one-time decision, but a continuous practice. Toxic individuals will keep trying to provoke reactions, testing boundaries to see if they can regain control. Smart individuals remain vigilant. They do not allow themselves to become complacent, knowing that toxicity will always attempt to find a way in. They reinforce their emotional boundaries daily, refusing to let outside negativity infiltrate their inner peace. They remain steady, composed, and in control, ensuring that no toxic person has the power to dictate their emotions or disrupt their mental well-being.